Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Thank you for listening to Your Working Life, my podcast series featuring thought leaders in the career and personal growth arena. I know that you spend a significant portion of your life at work, so I'm on a mission to provide you with tools, inspiration, and resources so you can enjoy your career and love your life. And I'm so pleased to welcome my special guest, Dr. John Arden, to the show. Dr. Arden, welcome today.
Well, thank you. Nice to be here with you.
I want to tell our listeners a little bit about you, and then we're going to launch into a wonderful conversation about your new book, The Brain Bible. Dr. John Arden is the Director of Mental Health Training for the Kaiser Permanente Medical Centers, and he oversees one of the largest mental health training programs in the world, operating in 24 different medical centers throughout Northern California. He's written several successful books, including the best-selling Rewire Your Brain, as well as Brain-Based Therapy for Adults and Brain-Based Therapy for Children and Adolescents. And his new book, The Brain Bible, A Plan to Stay Vital, Productive, and Happy for a Lifetime, is what we are going to discuss today. So, Dr. John, welcome. And I would love to know, how did you decide to write this book, The Brain Bible?
Well, I thought that there was a tremendous amount of misinformation out there about what you can do to keep your brain healthy and age more successfully and gracefully. So what I tried to do was take a broad look at all the literature, pay attention to what the science actually says, and come up with a number of factors that have the greatest amount of support from science. And I found 5. And I incorporated them in the mnemonic seeds. So the concept is, if you plant seeds for life, you'll be happier, you'll be more focused, you'll live longer, and you won't get dementia symptoms as early as some other people.
And we're going to unpack those seeds very soon, but I'd like for you to explain to us what happens to our brains as we age.
Well, let's say after about age 29, we find that we're not as quick as our younger friends, family members. However, we absorb a tremendous amount of wisdom over a lifetime. So we're not as quick, but we have a broader perspective. So if you can imagine that contrary trajectory whereby we're slower, but we're more wise. If we can continue being wiser about our health, then our decline won't be as steep. So, for example, around age 55, there's a tremendous difference between the directions that some people take. Some people get, I guess you could say, very unhealthy. Because there's a cumulative effect of some not so good lifestyle practices that really add up over a period of time. Meanwhile, other people that have been planting seeds, as we'll talk about in a while, don't age as quickly. So you see amazing divergence between those two groups. So then maybe by age 65, a person that hasn't been following those good health style practices might look like they're 75, and the other one might look like they're 55.
That's so true. And I can even think of people in my world, right, that are of similar age, but some just act and look and behave so much older, perhaps because they're not honoring their body. And perhaps we'll learn more when you talk about the seeds. So tell us about these 5 seeds that you have created as a baseline for the book.
So the 5 letters correspond to 5 healthy factors. And the first one is social connectiveness. And the fact of the matter is, our species, human beings, evolved on this planet because we work together to survive. And so we developed all these brain networks, these social brain networks that make us thrive when we're socially connected in positive relationships, and really falter when we're not in positive relationships or we're lonely. For example, we know that people that are lonely late in life get depressed more quickly. They get dementia symptoms more quickly. And even the caps on the ends of their chromosomes, these telomeres, have you heard
Yeah.
about those? They're like the tassels on your shoelaces. Those caps on the ends of the chromosomes shrink with loneliness. What we're talking
Wow.
essentially is accelerated aging.
Mm, mm.
So the first E, shall I go on?
Please, please do.
Okay. The first E is exercise. Probably the most powerful thing you can do for your brain. And what we're talking about here is aerobic exercise that it need not be, something that you practice in some fancy gym, but
Hmm.
rather just walking fast, getting your heartbeat up, and sweating a little bit
Right.
for maybe about 30 minutes a day. And we know that exercise is probably the best antidepressant that we have, the best anti-anxiety agent that we have. And with exercise, you can release this amazing protein that some people have even called miracle grow, called brain-derived neurotropic factor, which can result in the birth of new neurons in specific areas of your brain, including the hippocampus that lays down new memories.
That's
So,
inspiring. So we've got to get out there and exercise. It's amazing to me. We know this, right? But it's amazing to me how many adults just don't do it. What do you
well,
attribute that to?
laziness, really.
Yeah, yeah.
And we always procrastinate, but think of this. It is an evolutionary imperative because up until about 11,000 years ago, we moved as hunter-gatherers 10
Right,
miles a day, 10 miles a
right,
day. We
right.
have the same bodies, but we don't move 10 miles a day. There's very few people that do that, other than the folks that are training for a triathlon or something.
Hmm.
Uh, anyway, the second E is education. And if you're not learning something new on a regular basis, you're not building an infrastructure of connectivity in your brain that many people call cognitive reserve. So think of your brain as being composed of 100 billion neurons, and on average, every neuron has 10,000 connections with other neurons. So the more complex thought that you push yourself to gain and appreciate, the more connectivity that you have. So later on in life, the more you can lose without looking like you lost much.
That's
So
great.
so we know that people that age gracefully, that are challenging their brain, are really a whole lot sharper in their later years.
So let me
Now,
let me interrupt for a second to ask
sure.
you. So how can one challenge their brain as we age? Can you give an example?
Well, the best challenge always comes from trying to push yourself to learn things you had previously known nothing about.
Okay.
For
Okay. So
example,
new
let's
material.
say you know nothing about the Russian language, for example,
Mhm. Mhm.
and now you say, well, you know what? I know nothing about it. I studied Spanish, I studied French, the Romance languages. I know nothing about Russian. I'm going to learn Russian now. Or maybe you want to learn about uh, historical geology,
Mhm.
or maybe learning a new instrument or something like that. What I am not saying, however, is you just do one thing. What you want to do is a variety of different things and challenge your brain consistently and always get out of your comfort zone. That's where you get the most bang for your buck. If you're in your comfort zone and you're just learning things that you're just comfortable with because it gives you great pleasure and all that, that's not where you're building infrastructure. You build infrastructure when you push yourself to learn things you don't know anything about, and you're not quite even sure if you want to learn it.
That's
But
great.
however, then you gain some interest in it, and now you start building that infrastructure.
Wonderful. Thank you for that.
So the D is diet. We have an epidemic, I mean, a colossal epidemic about ready to blow up in the Western world, called metabolic syndrome, diabetes 2, and so on, because people eat garbage.
Yeah.
And what we eat has a major effect on the structure of our brain, the neurochemistry that our brain uses to produce complex thought, to carry on this conversation. So the cornucopia of brain chemistry is dependent upon a positive and good wide spectrum diet, and making sure that you get simple carbohydrates out of your life completely. And I don't
Hmm.
mean just sugar, I mean also white flour,
Right.
right rice, and all that. And then also trans fatty acids, fried foods, just to keep it simple. But there's a whole lot more to be said about that. But nevertheless, diet is fundamental. It is kind of like the idea of building your house on firm ground or on sand. Do you want to
Yes.
build your house on firm ground? Yes, of course. Now, the final S is sleep hasn't received enough attention in the popular press. I have been very pleased to see a few articles come out recently in Lancet and a few others, but that's not popular press. But it turns out that the architecture of sleep has to be um, uh, adhered to, meaning that we have stages of sleep that are very, very important. And people, unfortunately, have this idea of sleep as being one thing. And any way they can get that sleep, meaning not wake up in the middle of the night, is okay with them. However, there are stages of sleep that are very, very important for your longevity, for your immune system, and for the growth of your brain. And I'm speaking about slow wave sleep and also REM sleep, which isn't
Hmm.
slow wave sleep. So there are many sleep depressors that unfortunately people consume. For example, alcohol in the evening, a glass of wine or two at night depresses slow wave sleep. And so sleep architecture critically important. And those of us that are on the computer quite a bit, typing books
Right.
or blogs or whatever, looking straight at light, as you do with a computer screen, actually suppresses the secretion of the hormone called melatonin, which corrects your circadian rhythm. So, in other words, you're actually creating insomnia by looking at the computer screen late at night. So, there's a whole range of different sleep hygiene practices that we have to adhere to.
John, I'd love to unpack that a little bit because sleep is so important, and I try to honor my body every day with 8 hours of sleep because that's how I can be high functioning. That's how I can maintain my health and well being. So for me, that's an absolute deal breaker. And I will tell you, it took me a while in my adult life to really embrace that. So what are some tips for honoring the sleep that our bodies need? What are some suggestions?
Well, let's actually use some factors that we previously talked about that are actually beneficial for sleep. So,
Okay.
I mentioned the first E of seeds, which is exercise. And it turns out that research done at Harvard has found that if you get your aerobic boost 3 to 6 hours before you go to sleep, you'll get the maximum sleep benefit. So, here, what you're doing by taking a brisk walk, let's say after
Mm,
dinner, is you're burning off the excess stress hormones like cortisol, which, by the way, should be dropping about 4 p.m. in the late afternoon. But if you
right.
have it elevated into the evening, it's going to be harder to stay asleep. So here you're burning off the excess stress hormones, and you're releasing all sorts of very wonderful neurochemistry that helps rebuild your brain and also secrete the neurotransmitters that help you get to sleep. Also, uh, body temperature is very important. Now, a lot of people don't pay attention to it. I do a fair amount of traveling when I run around and give seminars. And no matter what hotel I go to now, for example, next week I'll be going to Southeast Asia. I bet you they're going to have quilts on the bed.
Mm.
Quilts in Southeast Asia. What for? And so over covering at night gives you shallow sleep and it lowers your sleep threshold. So, in other words, keeping your body temperature cool at night is critically important for the quality, the architecture of your sleep. So, there's another factor. One more that relates to the seeds. You see how all these seeds kind of work together.
Absolutely.
The D factor, what you eat at night, has a major effect on what kind of sleep you get at night. So, in other words, your dinner And whatever snack you might has a major factor on the quality of your sleep. If you eat simple carbohydrates, let's say like you're a dessert person, or for example, well, chances are you're going to have very poor quality sleep because now you've got simple carbohydrates that turn into glucose too quickly, right in the middle of your sleep cycle. And as a result, you're maybe not waking up, but your sleep isn't as deep. So diet is critically important as well.
So, John, I find this fascinating because in our work world, people are working well past 65, which used to be the traditional retirement age. So, for example, in regard to the Brain Bible, what are some action steps that people in that midlife should be thinking about to be more vibrant throughout their golden age career years, if that makes sense?
Oh, that's a great question. In fact, I led a job stress group for 16 years at Kaiser Vallejo. And in fact, I wrote a book called Surviving Job Stress. So I
Ah.
paid quite a lot of attention to this over that 16-year period. And it is true, as you say, Caroline, that there are many people that work well past their traditional retirement age and do so not only because finances require it, and we know now plenty of people are doing it for those reasons, but other people do it because they're interested in the subject matter. For example,
Right.
I was coordinating this very large meeting down in Oakland where we had a speaker talk about the neuroscience of different psychological disorders on Wednesday. And a couple of my colleagues, neuropsychologists that attended, are in their late 60s. And I asked, well, boy, this is great that you're continuing to work. I asked these two colleagues. They're, I think, 67 and 68. And I said, just curious, when are you thinking about retiring? And one of them, Dr. Biley, who's a neuropsychologist at Redwood City, said, I'm just having so much fun. I don't know what I would do
Yeah.
if I quit. And the other one said, yeah, I'm finding what I'm doing right now so interesting. Why would I retire unless they make me retire?
Right.
So if you have fun, if you change your job, and that's what I've been doing throughout the last 40 years of being in the mental health system, is constantly changing. Once I get bored in what I'm doing, I forge some new ground. So if you're challenging yourself to learn something new, then your job situation could be so much more vitalizing, so much more interesting. Now, not everybody can do that, of course, but there are a lot of micromanaging sort of tweaking that you could do with whatever job situation you have. So you've got to gain some interest in what you're doing and thereby some enthusiasm for learning something new.
Excellent. So, John, the book really hones in and focuses on the baby boomer generation, giving them insight and brain improvement exercises, if you will, for maintaining energy and focus. It seems to me that the seeds, the tools that you outlined, are very much applicable at any age. Is that accurate?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, I didn't develop the seeds necessarily only because of the baby boomers and longevity and all that. But in my position as the director of this large training program that you mentioned, I have to pay very close attention to what are the five stabilizing factors
Mm,
that can help any client come into our system. Let's say they're suffering from anxiety, depression, or whatever. What are the five stabilizing factors that can help them uh, uh, develop a better foundation for us to then work with them from? And those five factors have been found to be the most brain boosting, meaning the most mood boosting, and also stabilizing. So anybody that doesn't want to be depressed or anxious, wants to be sharper, really ought to be practicing the seeds or planting seeds throughout their life. And they could be fun.
Beautifully
It's not
put.
like, oh my God, I got to do
Right, right. Well, that's what I love. These action steps are very much implementable, right? They're not difficult, and so many of them are so logical, and we know about it. So I hope people can really see this as an opportunity to take advantage wherever you are in your lifetime engagement, to really use these seeds for your overall wellness and happiness and well-being. It's such common sense, John. I really appreciate, and I understand the science behind it now too. So thank you for that. Any parting words? Any parting words of wisdom for us?
Well, just to emphasize what I noted before, if you practice these seeds, then the process that we call neuroplasticity, meaning rewiring your brain and developing habits,
Mm,
uh, these seeds can be a part of the nourishment for your brain that's actually uh, something that you'll crave constantly. In other words, you won't do it because you've got to do it. You'll do it because you want to do it.
and your body
And
loves doing it. Yeah,
exactly, and you'll feel deficient unless you do it. So,
that's great.
so it's like eating healthy can be something that is something you're going to look forward to rather than that piece of pie. I'm not saying I'm against pie,
No, no,
but
I
but
understand.
yeah, practicing these seeds on a regular basis can be part of what makes you crave enjoyment.
Can you speak to how long it takes to develop these practices so they become part of your routine and something that you crave, as you just mentioned?
Well, a lot of rewiring your brain and neuroplasticity requires the engagement of an area of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is the most advanced part of the brain. And what is the prefrontal cortex? Well, it's the CEO of the brain. It's the
Well
brain's
put.
brain.
Hmm.
And so when you practice a new behavior, if you are engaged and really there when you're there, meaning be here now, so to speak, and that's why mindfulness and
Yes.
those sorts of practices are so popular right now because there's a lot of common sense, as you mentioned before. So when you practice these seeds with your prefrontal cortex, meaning you're there when you're there, then they will not require you a whole lot more time before you're going to enjoy them. If you grudgingly practice them, meaning, oh my God, darn it, I got to go take that walk, or I got to have
Mm.
a diet, or
Right,
whatever,
right.
then you're going to be dragging your feet and really not engaged as well as you might. So that person that engages from the very beginning um, is going to be practicing them with greater enjoyment, let's say in a week's time, as opposed
Right.
to somebody that's dragging their feet. And they might take a whole year. And oh God, I've got to go take a walk. I don't want to take a walk.
So you've got to embrace it with joy and enthusiasm and cup half full, right?
And make it novel too,
Yes.
because that's part of this whole mindfulness sort of perspective and being here now. Because let's say, for example, you take a walk or have a new recipe for a dinner or whatever. You pay very close attention to the nuances of what you are experiencing. If you're walking down a particular path, trees might change, and you're paying very
Hmm.
close attention to the topography. Or if you're eating a new dish, you're paying very close attention to the subtleties of whatever you're eating. So, being there with greater complexity would enrich your experience and thereby give you a greater sense of pleasure.
Excellent. Dr. John Arden, thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us today. And I would highly recommend that all of our listeners check out your new book, The Brain Bible, A Plan to Stay Vital, Productive, and Happy for a Lifetime. Tell us how we can buy your book and how we can follow you online.
Sure. Well, you can go to Amazon and just type in the Brain Bible
Hmm.
and get it there, or through McGraw-Hill, the publisher, or you could go to my website, and there are a number of different ways that you can get to an online vendor,
Mhm.
including Amazon and Powell's Books in Portland or whatever, Barnes and Noble. So my website is www.drjohnarden.com.
Wonderful. And Arden is spelled Arden, just for clarification. Dr. John Arden, thank you so much. What a joy. I wish you great success, and it was delightful to have you on the show today.
Oh, it was delightful to talk to you. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you. Yes. And I want to thank you for tuning into your working life, where my goal is to help you design your career destiny so it doesn't happen by default. True career and life satisfaction is possible, and it's time to embrace what you love doing so you can do more of it. I'm Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Take good care.